views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello there, and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and this week I am joined by an old friend you might remember. It's Michael Seleskie. Welcome back to the show, sir.
So glad to have the invite. Glad to be here. We got some good movies on the marquee this week.
I feel good. I feel guilty because usually when I have you on, we usually have at least one stinker, I feel like.
Yeah, but you did get me with a sequel that I hadn't seen the first one, so you got an extra movie
Give
on
you a
me.
little work, a little homework to do.
That's right.
Yeah, this week we have 4 movies, all kind of exciting here. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started with what we have on the marquee this week. I'm starting with a film from director James Gray. It is called Armageddon Time. James Gray, you might know from movies like Ad Astra and Lost City of Z. Fun filmmaker. This is his mostly autobiographical tale of being a kid growing up in a tumultuous time and how those events rippled throughout his life. He is represented as a youth by Banks Rapeta, young actor, playing Paul Graff, who is the surrogate for James Gray. He's in an immigrant family with affluent aspirations, set against the backdrop of America in 1980, as we're watching Ronald Reagan campaign to become president and all the things that would happen around this time, the political landscape of 1980. Paul, as a kid, just wants to be an entertainer. Often leads to him landing in trouble with teachers and others. He wants to be an artist, but he really struggles with authority. He finds a common interest in mischief with the only African-American boy in his class, Johnny Davis, played by Jalen Webb. And they kind of feed off each other, and they have an exasperated teacher who can't handle them. And Johnny doesn't have the privilege that Paul and his family have, but he has dreams too. He dreams of being an astronaut someday. Meanwhile, at home, Paul is faced with a big, noisy house with a mother, played by Anne Hathaway, who tries hard and loves her family, a father, played by Jeremy Strong, who is very serious about everything, especially punishment and not getting embarrassed by his children. He's got a brother, Teddy, who serves as his foil most of the time. But most notably in this movie, he has a grandfather who is played by Anthony Hopkins, with whom Paul has a special relationship. And it's his grandpa that he truly listens to, really the only person that he really listens to, and who listens to him and offers him advice about how to be a man, and who really cares about young Paul despite all of his problems. And it's kind of the strength of this film is the relationship between Paul and his grandpa. Teaches him how to stand up for others. There's a lot of trauma. It's a Jewish family in New York. All that they've gone through, he teaches Paul to remember your past. But it's also a lot of this movie is Paul and Johnny falling in love with the early hip-hop scene in New York in the early 1980s. The Sugar Hill Gang plays a big role in this, going to see them in concert. And unfortunately, Paul is tossed into a Catholic reform school, prep school, at one point because the regular school couldn't handle him anymore. And there he's met with a heavy dose of racism, both because he's Jewish and because he has a black friend. Yep. And he's also faced with some of it within his own house, actually. But the prep school he's in, this is where it gets kind of odd, is financed by Fred Trump and is kind of run by Marianne Trump, who is played by Jessica Chastain. Oh. There's some odd things in here, and there's a lot you can read into this part of the movie, but the school is attended by a bunch of racists. And this film really, it really hit me hard. There's a lot of messages going on in here, and I've listened to an interview with James Gray talking about how this really represented his life and a lot of things. Some of the stuff was really depressing. Some of it was really inspiring, specifically every time Anthony Hopkins is on screen. He, at this point in his life and his career, feels like he's kind of going through the motions, but going through the motions for him is nailing it every time still.
Yeah, and he gets these wizened old characters that show up on screen and just give, like little crumbs of wisdom out to the audience.
Yeah, he's just spitting gems, and it feels like he's putting in no work along the way, but it's great. And a lot of this is just dealing with the headspace that that Paul is in this age, and he's a kid who thinks he knows it all, of course, talking back to everyone and eventually realizing the things that he didn't know towards the end of the movie. And his friendship with Johnny was sweet. It stopped just short of getting into white savior territory.
Sure.
You know, it towed that line with him. And I felt like you could take what you want from the politics of this film and dealing with, you know, all the politics around Reagan and the Trumps and all this stuff and what James Gray was trying to convey with all of that. But it's a film about performances, and Anne Hathaway is great. Banks Repetto's great. Anthony Hopkins is great. Jeremy Strong is great as a horrible father.
Yeah.
Really enjoyable stuff. And this movie got me thinking afterwards.
Yeah, this is the first of two movies that we have on the marquee this week that you can tell were written and directed by people who primarily do plays, do work for the stage. And I think that this is one of those movies that 15, 20 years ago, you'd have seen show up at the multiplex. It would have done okay, probably not great.
In and out.
It'd be in and out, and you'd either get the chance to see it or you wouldn't. And I think the fact that we've got a streaming service that you can go and watch this on, where it doesn't need to make buku money, it doesn't need to draw in eyes, it doesn't need to defend its spot in the theater. I think this is one of those times where you look back and say, this is a really good time to be a movie fan. Because
it's great.
Stuff like this probably wouldn't make it on the to the multiplex now, but the fact that it's on a streaming service that we can get our hands on, that's good for everybody, because people are going to like this.
I agree. I think it's going to be a movie that's going to have some of these actors also getting some nominations at the end of the year, because some strong performances. So I ended up giving Armageddon Time 4.5 out of 5 stars. Is that right? 4.5 out of 5 stars. Sometimes I doubt myself. That's what I gave it. I gave it a high recommendation. So go check it out for sure. The next movie we have on the marquee, sir, is one that you have for us.
Yeah, that's right. I went to my couch.
Yeah.
And well, actually, I went to the local movie theater here in town, and I went and I saw The Banshees of Inisherin.
There you go.
And The Banshees of Inisherin is the second movie that we're seeing that's going to be directed completely by a guy primarily known for plays, although he's got some other movies in his arsenal. In Bruges is probably one of his better-known movies.
Martin McDonagh, yeah.
Yep. And this movie tells the story of two best friends living in a small western remote island off the coast of Ireland. It takes place in the middle of the Irish Civil War. And the fact that it takes place during the Irish Civil War really isn't the point of this movie. This is a very low-stakes movie. This is a movie about two friends that one of which is arbitrarily deciding that he does not want to be friends with the other character anymore. Yeah. Brendan Gleeson plays a wizened old fiddler, musician on the island who's coming to, I don't know, maybe a midlife crisis in his life and deciding that he wants to leave behind a legacy. And the ability to create a legacy is being thwarted by his best friend, Colin Firth, who... Colin Farrell, pardon me, thank you. Colin Farrell, who continues to extend his days with monotony and tedium, and he decides that he does not want to be part of this anymore, and so tells Colin Farrell that he no longer would like to be friends with him. This movie is absolutely beautiful. Oh, it's got some great acting.
Paintings in this movie.
I think the really fun thing about this is just the great atmosphere. The feeling of the whole movie is all kind of set in this dark tone, where you get the feeling of it being cold, like you're sitting on a remote western island. There's some great bit parts played by Barry Keoghan, who kind of plays the town, for lack of a better term, idiot.
Yeah, he's the simple one.
He's the simple one on the.
But he's great.
We've got Kerry Condon, and I think that this movie. People who know me know that I'm a big fan of Irish history, Irish politics, and for me, I read this as an allegory of 20th century Irish politics. And if you'd like to know more about that, you can attend my TED Talk at any time. I'll talk your ear off about how each of these characters represents a different faction in the Irish Civil Wars, the things that happened after that. But at the end of the day, this is a tale that it's got some humor, it's got some pathos, it takes some really weird turns. But I think for everyone involved, this is some star quality acting from these people.
It's phenomenal. I mean, Colin Farrell is kind of, I feel like Martin McDonagh's muse. Like, he's in almost all of his movies. Brendan Gleeson is in several of them as well. And these two are like, inseparable. They're friends, in real life, and that's what makes it so great. Is these guys play like old friends, and all of a sudden, my best friend doesn't even want to talk to me, won't even acknowledge me.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a relationship where Brendan Gleeson's character of Colm is like, I'm done with this relationship. I'm done. And they're like, well, tell me what I did wrong. It's like, no, you didn't do anything wrong. You're just dull.
Yeah.
I don't like you for you. And when everyone in this small village is like, I love, you guys having a row? What's going on?
Yeah, everybody thinks they're fighting. I really do think that this movie has a lot to say about, our current relationship with something like Twitter. It does feel like he's unfriending him on Facebook.
Absolutely.
He's breaking him off from his life. This movie has something to say about the state of male fragility, male friendships outside of the family.
Inability to communicate.
The absolute inability to communicate. And I think this, is it a great movie? I don't think it's fantastic. I think it's kind of slow in places, and I think if you're not going in with the right mindset, I went and saw this with my wife, and we both walked out of the theater not terribly impressed, but the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. I really enjoyed the dichotomy of the movie. Literally, one of the opening scenes we see is Colin Farrell starting off, he's walking from the docks, it's idyllic, the sun's out, the rainbow's shining, and by the end of it, we're not spoilers, but we've gone to a completely different place.
Well,
it's become a very dark movie.
It starts off kind of as a dark comedy in bits.
Yeah.
When they go to the pub and like what, and there's dark comedy and there's good little bits, like there's a scene where Colin Farrell's character goes into the local shop and he's arguing with the shopkeeper and the cop about what's news and no news. And I feel like, I love this. And then it turns into real dark sadness. And I felt like everyone, even the background characters in this village, are swimming in this sadness of this guy who doesn't understand why he's being rejected by his friend. And not only him, but Colin Farrell's character starts to lose everyone. His sister, the baby, the donkey that he loves, his other best friend. Like he starts losing things, and it really starts to get heavy in sadness. And Colm starts to say, gets to the point where he's like, I don't want to be your friend so much that I will mutilate myself to prove you. And it gets real dark in here. I think Brendan Gleeson is amazing as the old curmudgeon in this movie.
And that's kind of where the movie took a turn for me, is when he starts his acts of self-mutilation to try to prove to Colin that he does not want to be his friend anymore. It really takes off in a dark direction.
And I think it's ironic how he does it, because it's ironic what it's doing to the dream that he's having for himself to create beautiful music.
And I love how everybody in his family, everybody in the community is like, well, don't you kind of want to see if he'll go through with it just once? And everyone's, no, this is what he needs for his art.
Yeah. I really like Colin Farrell. He's one of my favorite actors, and I like him in this as Patrick, is a guy who he tells this guy's like, look, I just want to be nice. You have this whole legacy you want to leave behind. I just want to be nice. I want to be remembered as being nice. I want to be nice to the people now, and my legacy is I'm just a nice guy. But you might call it simple, and I kind of like that with him, because it's kind of really just a small personal story. Some melancholy, some sadness.
Yeah.
It's got all the hallmarks of a great Irish tragedy.
And like I say, if you'd like to meet me at the pub, buy me some Guinness and let me talk to you for 4 hours about how each of these characters represents the IRA, Northern Ireland, the Irish diaspora, the people stuck on the island after the Irish diaspora.
And it's funny that some of these characters, like Siobhan, his sister, this place looks so idyllic, but she wants to leave so bad. She's willing to go to a place where people are literally bombing each other to get off this island.
And see, and that her character is what convinced me in my head that this movie is an analogy, is that on a microcosm, they are on an island, just like Ireland is an island, and she has opportunities to leave the island.
Yeah.
And the people, when she leaves, it affects the people that remain.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what, when it clicked in my head, I'm like, this character represents what actually happened to the people of Ireland after the famine, when there was so much expatriation.
Right. Yep.
So I really do think this is an analogy. And once I got out of the movie and it's put more thought into it, the more I kept thinking that it was an analogy. I don't think you have to go in thinking that to enjoy this movie. Mm-hmm. I think it's got some beautiful comedy in it. I really like the stuff. Whenever the priest is around, I find that to be really funny. It's very dry humor. It's British humor. But it's not British humor. It's Irish humor. Yeah. So
Yeah. All right, what did you end up giving the Banshees of Inisherin?
I believe I gave it 4. 4 out of 3 stars. No, I gave it 3 stars.
3 stars. Oh, boy.
That might have been from earlier in the week.
All right. Yeah, I really loved it. This was one of those movies that I'm looking forward to go watching again. It kind of is in my wheelhouse.
I don't know when I'll be depressed enough to want to watch it a second time.
I love depressing movies. And I love the wardrobes. That's the only reason I'm wearing this heavy sweater right now is the wardrobes.
He is suffering for you.
Ooh, it's hot.
He is suffering for you.
The production value, some of those scenes look like they're paintings. I really
gorgeous.
enjoyed it. Yeah. So I end up giving the Banshees of Inisherin 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Whew.
How about that? Back-to-back 4.5s. Good times at the theater right now. All right, let's move on to what we have on our streaming spotlight this week. And sir, I am going to turn to the Roku channel.
What?
Yeah. Haven't done a movie from the Roku channel.
Hardest part about this movie is finding it.
440 episodes. This is the first time, but here we are for a movie called Weird, the Al Yankovic Story from director Eric Appel. This is the kind of true, not really true, completely parodied life of the king of parody songs, Weird Al Yankovic. Weird Al is played as an adult version by Daniel Radcliffe. We see him as a kid, as a teen, but mostly as the full-fledged Weird Al as Daniel Radcliffe. The film opens with kind of your standard music biopic. We see a young Al dealing with life as a young child, and the rest of the ride is a mostly false retelling of his rise to fame with some crazy but absolutely true parts thrown in to kind of keep you off guard of what's real and what's not in here. But like his great songs and his cult classic film UHF and Al TV and all those things, this is classic nonsense Al, and it's a ton of fun, absurd comedic realism that Weird Al is known for. We get to see Al get his first accordion, how that led him down a dark path. The story of a young teen facing nerdy teen pressure, things like going to polka parties, trying his first accordion because his friends were doing it. He rebels against his domineering father who wouldn't stand for his son changing the lyrics to songs. So he ran off, met up with other like minds, met up with Dr. Demento, played by Rainn Wilson there, and started down the treacherous path to stardom. And it plays out like a classic behind the music story. As he gets more and more famous, things spiral out of control. Of course, his marriage to Madonna being unhealthy. You know this isn't real. And after the success of his completely 100% original song, Eat It, suddenly having to deal with that kid from the Jackson 5 coming along and parodying his song with a song called Beat It, and alcohol, violence, and self-importance. A little bit of a Jim Morrison allegory in here. And this movie, I felt, lived and died on the wig of Daniel Radcliffe's performance. Mm-hmm. I thought he killed it. I thought he completely committed to this role. And there's so much winking in this movie, but it felt like everyone in here was still committing to the bit. And it's filled with comedic actors playing famous people. There's a pool scene that's like a who's who.
There are so many good cameos.
It's ridiculous how many people are in this.
And yeah, Daniel Radcliffe does an amazing job as Weird Al. I just had a conversation with my mother-in-law who was reluctant about seeing this movie because she's such a big Weird Al fan. She doesn't know if Daniel Radcliffe is going to do it justice.
Sure.
And I told her, I said, you have to go see it. It's you have to watch it because he does such a good job as young Weird Al, to the point where I know that his audio was dubbed in. It was classic Weird Al. But it's so well meshed into it that you almost think, did Daniel Radcliffe learn
I had to double check. I Googled it.
Yeah, I wondered if he did it.
And Al Yankovic in here in a little cameo himself as a record
Several
producer.
cameos.
Yeah,
he pops up 3 or 4 different places in this movie.
So in my house, UHF is a classic.
Yes.
Right? It's revered territory in our house. And this movie had my whole family around watching it. My wife, my 9-year-old daughter, everyone was loving it. My 9-year-old daughter doesn't get what's going on in here because depending on your level of fandom, there's Easter eggs everywhere in here.
There are so many Easter eggs in this movie. I loved this movie. It was complete absurdity. Trying to explain the plot of this movie to somebody makes it sound like you are on a hallucinogenic
Total
drug.
fever dream.
Oh, it's unbelievable. At some point where you're trying to explain that Weird Al Yankovic carries on a long torrid love affair with Madonna, who ends up becoming a drug cartel kingpin.
Yeah.
where are you actually?
This is the only way it should have been, though. I mean, like,
No, absolutely.
I've heard some people complain that it wasn't your standard music biopic of Weird Al, but
I've seen enough music standard biopics. I was actually dreading standard music biopic.
Yeah, we don't need that.
For me, this is like Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, except about a real person.
Right. Somebody that everyone loves. The nicest person in Hollywood. I mean, and Al he's in on the joke. It's great. It's so perfectly weird. Up through the credits, there's a song in the credits that explains everything. Like, you thought you were going to get this, didn't you?
I seriously, the minute this movie turned for me was within about 2 minutes into the movie when the parents look deadpan at Weird Al and say, you need to give up on your dreams and stop doing the things that you love. And I went, oh, wow, it's going to be one of these movies.
Right.
This is going to be fun.
So I discovered what a hey boy is, and I'm never going back.
Yeah, we were just, the wife and I were just watching another movie where they pulled the same deal, and my wife goes, oh, look, it's a hey boy. And I went,
hey boy.
Yeah, it is.
Love it. I was very happy with what we ended up getting here. Curious what you gave the old Weird Al movie.
4. I guess I probably could have gone higher, but 4 seemed about right. It's a wonderful time. Like I say, if you have trouble finding it, you're probably not the only one, but you should make an effort to get it.
Yeah, check it out. I agree. I gave it 4. I could probably give it 4.5. It's so much fun, and it's a movie that I actually started rewatching again last night as I was getting my notes together. Like, I'm trying to remember how that started, and put it on. And my daughter goes, "We watching Weird again?"
Yeah, no, I went and saw Weird Al when he was here in Madison a couple months ago, and he did a long Van Morrison riff in the concert, and that brought real flashbacks to what that part in this movie was.
Yeah.
He's
so much fun.
He's a treasure.
He is. I love it. So go find Weird and enjoy it. Sit down and enjoy it. All right, last movie on our streaming spotlight this week. We turn to Netflix. Sir, I turn to you. What do we have?
We've got a sequel to the first feminine sort of flavored Sherlock Holmes movie.
Yes.
The Enola Holmes. This is Enola Holmes 2, starring Millie Bobby Brown. Henry Cavill is the sort of the glue Sherlock Holmes character.
Yeah.
And this movie is really enjoyable. Millie Bobby Brown is hard to take your eyes off of. Whenever she's on screen, she's doing such a good job with this role.
Charismatic.
It feels like this is the spiritual successor to some of the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes movie. There's a lot of fourth wall breaking.
So much
fourth wall breaking, and I know that was the bit from the first movie because I did go out and watch the first movie because I hadn't seen it. I think these are really classic. They have a very good message. This one actually has a very political message toward the end of the movie. But the message in these movies are very, very positive. The women can do anything that the gentleman can do. It's kind of set in this late Edwardian, early Edwardian, late Victorian England, where there's a lot of classism. Several of the devious characters are lords or lord adjacent. There's the downtrodden working classes and the struggles that they have to go through. The score in this is really fantastic. Just the ability to move the screen along. Basically, all of these actors are very fun to watch. You get some great character actors in there. There's several Harry Potter alums in there that play great, and the story is engaging. My only real problem with the story is that there are some leaps of logic that Enola makes that I don't think anybody could make. That I know that
little magical realism in there.
Little magical realism, but it's really good. It's a bit long at a little over 2 hours, but you won't be disappointed. It's a very fun movie to watch, and it'll captivate you. And I think there's definitely the thing that you love about these Holmes movies, really any version of Sherlock Holmes, whenever he's on screen, is that the rewatchability, the ability to go back now that you know the outcome and to find all of the clues that second time, it really makes for good repeated watching. And I think Netflix knocked it out of the park with both this one and the first one.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the first one, and I enjoyed this one a little more. Part of it because we didn't have to get into the whole thing of introducing who she is, how she's connected to Sherlock, and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
We can just get into the mystery.
And they used a lot of elements from the first movie, a lot of flashbacks, of course, because they had the rights to it. it still kind of baffles me that some of these people have gone on to become really big stars.
Yeah.
Millie Bobby Brown's got a makeup line. She's
Millie Bobby Brown.
She's fantastic.
And Henry Cavill Superman.
And Henry Cavill still shows up to play what had to be maybe 30 or 40 minutes of screen time. Just really...
They seem like they're having fun. And
yeah.
I would take another one of these like every 3 years.
Absolutely.
Let's come back to this. I like this one. I thought the mystery was well paced. It doesn't try to do more than kind of continue the story from the first one. They kind of keep going with that, and I like you say, a spiritual successor to those Guy Ritchie ones. Enola knows how to fight. She knows how to deduce. The fourth wall breaking gets a little old for me. I would have knocked it down by about 40% because there's a lot of looking at the camera.
The big improvement for me on this one is that you're in the first movie, they concede that they're basically trying to solve two cases at the same time.
Yeah.
And in the second one, it appears to only be one. Sherlock is working on a case that he realizes very quickly is absolutely connected to the first case. So it's really just one case.
Right.
And I think it works a lot better without having to go back and forth between the storylines.
Yep.
Helen Bonham Carter, again.
She's great.
Stealing scenes, putting in amazing work. Just this, it's like she's getting out of her Tim Burton era and really showing what that sort of aloof mental mind space can be on screen. She's fantastic. I love a lot of the ancillary characters. Inspector Lestrange coming in here. The fact that they did not only a gender swap, but a racial swap with Moriarty, I think is really telling for this series. And they do tease that there could be more coming.
Yes, they do.
I hope there are, because it really is enjoyable.
I do too. And I enjoy this. I think it gives, that this film gives women the power, gives girls a great message. My daughter loves watching these movies, gives her a great message.
Yep.
You're going to see a lot of people up in their feelings right now. I've seen it online already. A bunch of people up in their feelings because, they gave women the sense of pride and agency in this movie. And some people just don't like that, And
without
there's
making
a contingent of man babies out there who
without
can't
making a
handle
political
that.
comment, those guys can go.
Don't listen to that trash. Go watch this movie. Go watch both of them. They're really fun.
Variety's the spice of life, people. This stuff is excellent.
I agree. All right, what did you end up giving Enola Holmes 2?
4. This is
Nice.
Sometimes you make me sit through some tripe. You did not make me sit through any really bad stuff this week. I really enjoyed this. I will rewatch this on my own time for funsies.
That's a victory right there. As I was putting all my notes together, I gave all these big scores. I said, poor Enola Holmes. And any other week, it'd be like the biggest movie of the week for me.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, she was up against a bunch of movies that are right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, but like I say, I do think
this
says something about the state of the cinema. Where, once again, 15 years ago, this would have been in the theaters. I think it would have done pretty well. It's relegated to streaming, but it has the space to live there.
Quality stuff. Let's see what I gave Enola Holmes 2. Let's go to the tote board. It says 3.5 stars.
There you go.
Good movie. Go check it out. It's over on Netflix. All right, let's take a look ahead at what is coming soon. I look to the weekend of November 18th, leading into the holiday weekend. We have several movies. First up is in theaters, a film called She Said, the story of the New York Times reporters who broke the story on Harvey Weinstein that took down a monster and started the Me Too movement.
That looks fantastic.
Does. Stars Carey Mulligan and Zoe Kazan. Also in theaters, The Menu. Couples travel to a remote island to dine at an exclusive restaurant where the chef creates a lavish menu with some shocking ingredients. Stars Ralph Fiennes, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Nicholas Hoult. This looks really interesting.
Really looking forward to that one.
Over on Netflix, a movie called The Wonder, a mystery starring Florence Pugh and Tom Burke, two strangers who transform each other's lives in 1862 Ireland, leading to some psychological terror. We also have Slumberland over on Netflix, an adventure comedy starring Jason Momoa, starring a young girl who discovers a secret map to Slumberland, where she can traverse dreams, nightmares, and hopefully return home. We also have, on HBO Max, A Christmas Story Christmas, the sequel to A Christmas Story. It's a huge cash grab, but check it out. It'll be over on HBO Max.
Nobody told me they were doing a live-action Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland. Yeah. I'll never not have nightmares again.
There you go. We also have over on Disney Plus, real quick, I saw Disenchanted, another Disney sequel to the 2007 hit Enchanted. And the movie Spirited, which I talked about last week, has been pushed back and will be coming out this weekend. So that's everything happening leading up to the holiday. Before we leave, we want to thank our sponsor, Marcus Theaters, The Palace. Thank you for sponsoring this program. Next week, I'm going to be talking about Black Panther 2, My Father's Dragon, Causeway, And I'll be joined by a new friend of the show, Kate Sadler, to do all that. Sir, thank you again for joining me. I'm glad we got good movies this week.
Yep. Looking forward to the next time, hopefully.
Absolutely. There will always be a next time. Well, until next week, I'm Jamison.
And I'm Michael.
Roll the credits.